And we are finally live.
Yay! We're here.
Hey, everybody. I'm Haley Gray. This is Charlene Ignacio. Welcome.
Woo-hoo. Hello, everyone.
So happy to have you here.
It has been a marathon, Haley. Thank you again for being
Yeah.
backbone, that support, everything. It's so easy to talk to another CEO that gets it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. We've been collaborating on a couple of these projects lately, running summits on the back end. And you've been doing the front end. I've been hiding in the background, making messes, cleaning up messes, hiding bodies.
Hey, you know what, guys? What you don't realize is everything that happens, and everyone always thinks, that was awesome. And you're like, oh, only if you knew all the back end that happens in order for it to be awesome.
Right. That's always kind of the fun thing, like, with, like even with my Facebook group, people are like, oh my gosh, it's just amazing that you've got this huge Facebook group. It's like it just popped up out of nowhere. And I'm like, if you only, what you see is this little teeny tiny thing on top of the water. What you don't see is this whole other iceberg that's down there floating around.
So true. And they don't see all the maintenance that goes into it either. Time, effort, strategy, manpower, salaries. I mean, just all those things.
Yeah. People, personalities, upset people, all the things. Yeah.
No, they don't see it.
Yeah. So, yeah. And the interesting thing is, when I talk to people a lot about marketing, and I'm sure you do too, is that people seem to think that like marketing is kind of like a one-time event and that you're kind of done after that.
Nope. It's never done. It's the farming, guys. It's farming. Marketing is farming. And then sales is harvesting. And you need both in order for it to work. And it has to happen almost in syncly with each other. Like you have to harvest the same time when you're farming so that you always have something to come back to.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's always kind of funny to me because it's like always like, oh, okay, I'm going to do my website and I'm just going to throw it up there and that's going to be it. And I wish.
Not only do they wish, but they think it magically is going to happen, right? And they think, oh, I spent all this money. And then they try to spend some ads and then they try to, tweak it again. And you're just like, there's a sequence. Everyone, there is a strategy and an execution to it all.
Mm-hmm. So where do you find that the marketing pieces fall apart the most for people?
3 ways. One, they're walking into a waterfall of lead opportunities with a tin cup, and they don't have the capacity to absorb lead generation and the results. Second is they definitely don't understand that their ideal client is a moving target. They just think, if I throw everything in this one direction, that's the only time they play. And then, Haley, this is the third thing I think that's come over time because of the digital landscape, is that sales and marketing principles have never changed. Just because we have a digital landscape to do them in does not mean they've changed because of that. In fact, you have to stay so close to those principles that govern marketing and sales because they will always be forever true.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how, the basics never change.
Nope.
And it doesn't matter if you're selling high ticket items or a $15 lantern or a $5 bar of soap or, $100,000 whatever. The marketing and sales principles still hold.
They sure do. And I think, Haley, I want to ask you, like, what have you seen as you continue to build these websites? I mean, has the person who's shopping changed? Are they more educated? Are they more aware? Like, are they coming to you better, like, capable of having an understanding of what you're doing for them?
Yes and no. I think is kind of the answer to that. I think that there's like this idea, and there's been this idea that a website is going to yield clients instantaneously. And if you're an e-commerce site, somebody may come onto your website and buy from you. And ideally, that's what happens in, many businesses. But I think that what people lose sight of the fact is that people rarely are going to buy a service without talking to the owner, or to a person first. And sometimes if it's a significant enough item, that's more than a couple of cups of coffee, they're probably going to also want to talk to the person who's selling it. So like if you're selling CBD oil or you're selling whatever that's kind of more expensive, like jewelry items, a lot of times, I see people like browse on the internet, but they may very well turn around and want to go fondle it and feel it in person, or talk to the owner before, or interact with the store in other ways before they come back and buy.
Right. We saw that with the recent event. There was over 385 visits to the link. And we were like, why is it not converting? And it's because they're either going to the website, they're either trying to figure out what to do next. They don't know how to handle a registration link. And at the end of the day, it's like, you know what? Over communicating is always going to win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a lot of times people will go and they'll circle around like little sharks. They kind of, circle, and they think about it, and then they think about it, and they think about it some more. And hey, Tish and Cindy and Irene. Hey, guys.
Hello.
Hello. And, it's kind of interesting to see them like, participating in that like circling behavior. And the website is just part of that cyber stalk you and figure out if they want to do business with you behavior.
Right. And the unfortunate part is that sometimes it's the 7th and 8th touch that the business owner just gives up on. They figure, once they're 5, if they're not buying and not converting, that they stop. And I'm like, just keep going. You don't know who's watching.
Mm-hmm. There's some interesting statistics about that too, where, most people buy between the 5th and the 8th touch, like 60 to 80% of the sales happen. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, whoa. So it's really, it's a lot of touches. It's a lot of conversations. It's a lot of engagements back and forth before somebody is going to decide, hey, I'm going to do this.
Right. And I think it's also too, like on the client side, their responsibility is to say, if I'm on Facebook, you're on Facebook. You need to know where your customers, you need to know where they're landing and spending their time, or where they're looking for third-party validation.
Yeah, absolutely. And recognize that validation may be on multiple platforms. Chances are they're going to go Google you first.
Yeah, totally. That's usually kind of 9 out of 10 times like the fastest thing for them to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How many people Google somebody before they do business with them? Or like, hey, I saw this thing on Amazon. Hey, let me go see if it's legitimate first.
Right. Exactly. I don't know why, but I just feel like sometimes even the customer, they hear the same thing, but it's like on the 15th time they've heard it, and it might not be the same person saying it. It's finally when it clicks.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, how many times have you been in a room of people and you say something and you get totally ignored? And then, somebody else says exactly the same thing and they get heard, and everybody's like, oh my God, that's so brilliant.
It's such a painful truth, but it is. It's like I said the same thing and you weren't ready yet those whole times. And then they go to someone else and I'm like, you know what? That's just, you got to stick to it. You got to just be consistent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's part of the whole process. Yeah, totally. And yeah, sales and marketing is a process. It's not like, it's not a destination.
No,
I wish it were.
We were doing that today with one of the clients. We took their idea of what their client journey was, put it on the whiteboard, and then we actually dissected it. Mm-hmm. And they saw all the holes of how they weren't reinforcing, they weren't creating retention, they weren't creating a follow-up sequence. And they said, well, that's like 6 to 7 more touches. And I said, but these are things you can automate. These are things that you can do without doing the work, and it will help you convert them. Yeah.
Human connection is very important. And business being likable is also part of, so is branding. Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think that one of the biggest problems I see with people is that they don't have that automation set up in their business. They're they're a business and they're trying to grow, and they've maybe got 5 or 6 or 7 or 800 people on an email list. They're not emailing regularly. They don't have any follow-up process after somebody buys from them. There's no sequence to, to announce when the next whatever is coming up. You can pay for all of the other marketing and advertising in the world, but if you're not doing these things, that follow-up sequence and that follow through and those touches, then to me, it's almost worthless to be doing the lead generation and the SEO and the ads and all that kind of stuff. Because if the client doesn't know what they're doing with the client, with their clients once they get them,
right?
Here, I've handed you a pile of leads. Now what are you doing with it?
Oh yeah, it was really hard because a lot of the clients, we sat down and went through the summit and all their lead opportunities. And it was like, okay, guys, now get to work. And they were like, oh, sure. I wish we could give someone our sales and our marketing and our funnel building and all that. And I said, well, right now, you've got to test it out to see how it works, because your projects sell at $40,000.
Mm-hmm.
That's not just a phone call and a shake, hands at a networking event. And it's kind of like that. Like you said, like sometimes it's those touches. Sometimes it's like setting up the automation, getting the teams in there because they're selling such a big ticket item.
Yeah. But there has to be a follow-up process outlined in anything you do. What
Right.
does your sales process look like from start to finish?
Exactly. Do you find like people are just afraid of automation, or do you feel like they don't know how to use it? Because I feel like some of my clients, they don't have a strategy. So they bring me on to fix that, and then we execute.
A lot of times what I'm running into is they've heard maybe of a CRM. They've heard that automation is possible, but they're terrified of using it in any way, shape, form, or fashion. And it can take a while to socialize the idea that, hey, you're leaving a lot of money on the table. And this is nonprofits. This is for-profits. It is doctors. It's attorneys. It's every type of business. And once they start coming up with that idea of following up and following through, their businesses just explode. I mean, right. I remember talking to somebody who's a longtime friend like 4 or 5 years ago. And I'm like, so what are you doing at this point in your business? And she was like, and it was like, are you following up at that point? And she was like, no. And then they set that automatic like follow up at that particular like point. And it was like, holy crap. But just like setting a reminder to follow up, and your automation can just be, that it sets a reminder for you to do certain things at certain times.
Right. And I think too, like one of the things we did today was actually go through the list and categorize them.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew who our sponsors were going to be next, who our vendors were going to be next, who our next group of nonprofits were going to be, who this one client had, touches that he could actually nurture them through.
Right.
I think you just have to be vigilant. And I think, as we've made this shift from one CRM to another, it's a mammoth of a job. Like it's really hard, but it's so worth it. It all pays off.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree.
So much easier.
Yeah. And Irene says, following up, everything and some thank you for the business is very important. Absolutely. Yeah. And just being consistent in that process. What is your follow-up process? What is your thank you process? What are all these things? Most businesses don't have that process defined at all, much less actually following any of it. Because they don't know what it is. So how are they going to follow a process if they haven't ever defined it?
Yeah, that's true. And I think sometimes too, like some businesses think, oh, I don't need to. And it's like, well, you should have it for any business, whether it's a service, whether it's a product, whether it's a small price point or a large price point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. X number of weeks after your purchase, did you ask for a Google review?
Right.
Or did you do this or did you do that?
Right. Like we want to do a survey, and it's like today we came up with the questions, and now it's time to execute it for next 72 hours and, put the next event up. Like there's just so many moving parts, and it's like, have a team do it or just lay out the map so everyone can follow it.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. And if there is no map, if there is no plan, have a plan to fail.
Yep, really is. And I think a lot of people miss that. They think, okay, I don't want to write a business plan, but at least make a plan with your customers in mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's their experience going to be like? Long-term retention, you know, acquisition of a next sale. Like, how do you do that? All that has to be mapped out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And if it's not, well, so I think it is time
Okay.
for us to head over to Clubhouse.
Okay.
what's
And then you've
really
got the
cool,
link in there, right?
I do have the link. And y'all, if you are not able to come and join, I am so sorry, but I want to encourage everybody to come and join and hang out with us on Clubhouse and come play. And, you know, I hope to see you guys shortly
Yes.
because it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm going to pop that link up. And Charlene is going to go hop over while I shut things down here and message everybody. And we'll talk soon. See you in a bit.
Okay. See you over there. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.